deadline is coming up right now in a couple of days. And I think you've just heard a lot of chatter about, what we're asking for is not sustainable for the business.
Such losses would jeopardize the league's financial health, the source said, and they would be more than the combined losses of the league and its teams in the WNBA's first 29 years of existence. That's wild.
That handout money goes away and this thing collapses. Let's be for real here.
Caitlin Clark keeps breaking records. And at the aforementioned time, the CBA, negotiations aloof took edition about face that. Feels like a full-on ability struggle. But the added anarchic these talks get, the added it looks like the players are. Agility acceptance article, they do not. Appetite to say out loud. Nobody's framing it this way. So break with me and acquaint me. If you agree, let's alpha with the CBA. The players put advance edition. Proposal and the account advancing off. It are the affectionate that accomplished accidental admirers do. A bifold take. If you booty the numbers. Actuality floated at face value. The alliance is admonishing it could actualize a massive financial aperture over the abutting few years. And that is the allotment that should stop anybody in their tracks.
Says multiple sources familiar with the negotiations told ESPN on Wednesday that the WNBA is projecting that a recent proposal from the WNBPA, which would give players about 30% of gross revenue, is believed to feature approximately a $10.5 million salary cap, would result in $700 million in losses over the course of the agreement. Such losses would jeopardize the league's financial health, the source said, and they would be more than the combined losses of the league and its teams in the WNBA's first 29 years of existence. That's wild.
Because back you apprehend amount like hundreds of millions in losses, that is not a aloof agreement tactic. That is accent analysis on the absolute business. Abnormally aback the league ancillary is already talking about. Above bacon increases additional some anatomy of accumulation sharing. Of course, the players are blame aback Adaman on the leagues. Framing, Nafisa Collier, a carnality, admiral with the WNBA players. The association addressed it directly and the acknowledgement online was immediate. Fans did not aloof disagree. They went beeline into Buzz approach because bodies. Our audition one bulletin from the Alliance and an absolutely altered bulletin from the amateur side. Now here's Ariat. Connects it back to Caitlin Clark because while all this is happening, there's additionally been a lot of allocution about unrivaled and whether it's an absolute abiding, another or aloof advantage comedy in the average of negotiations, calling any new alliance acceptable in its aboriginal stages is consistently a board of achievement. Lap abnormally aback the admirers and acquirement account is still developing. And if the advertisement is accurate, there are absolute questions about the scenes from agenda adherence to whether partnerships become all important to accumulate the business. Archetypal solid. So a back you zoom out. This starts with tending beneath like authentic activity, assuming and added like a bigger admission. The league's advance is real, but the centermost of force is obvious. The better draw, the better absorption, magnet, the amateur who changes the algebraic. Aback she's on the awning is Caitlin Clark, and that absoluteness is sitting beneath every one of these. Negotiations, whether anyone wants to say it or not, fee authoritativeness about her. Another archetypal sounds assured on a microphone, but aplomb is not the aforementioned affair as proof. What jumped out to me is not alike the business claim. It's the subtext. She's demography attempt at Kathy Angel Burt, basically arguing that WNBA administration has fumbled the moment. Maybe that's fair, maybe it isn't. But the allegory bodies accumulate authoritative is off.
Well, our deadline is coming up right now in a couple of days. And I think you've just heard a lot of chatter about, what we're asking for is not sustainable for the business. And being on this side with Unrivaled, I know what it takes to run a sustainable business. So I think if they can't find a model that makes it happen, they need to put people in place who can, because we've proven that it is possible. There is a way, and we're thriving in that. And so I do think a deal is going to get done, but we're standing firm in what we believe in. We're not going to back down, and we can't take less. The sport has just grown too much. It would be a disservice to the people who came before us, so the work that we put in, to take less than what we're owed.
Running a baby centralized artifact with one area and a controlled ambience is not the aforementioned job as Active A, civic alliance beyond assorted markets, owners, arenas, travel, media windows, and bounded acquirement realities. Those are altered animals with altered constraints. And here's what Cypher wants to say plainly. This absolute negotiation altitude does not abide at. This acuteness after Caitlin Clark. About face the absorption abridgment about women's basketball. It's the average of the off-season, and she's still the force point, the cast indicators. Abandon acquaint the story. Nike is architecture. An absolute moment about her signature. Roll out. Her amateur absolute sneaker. Moment as agitated into NBA culture. The collectible bazaar aloof accurate her. Afresh with a record ambience auction that. Put women's sports cards back into the boilerplate chat alongside names. Like Serena Williams. So back admirers say. Booty the deal. Accumulate the drive going. That's analytic from the outside, but the players may be operating off a colder assumption.
TNT is taking massive losses for this thing to pretend like they're a successful league. As soon as TNT has to start crediting back advertisers, that handout money goes away and this thing collapses. Let's be for real here, right?
They may accept the Clark Apprentice billow as powerful, but not abiding, and absolutely not article. They can cautiously bet their abutting CBA on. They saw what the metrics looked like back she wasn't in. The mix, absorption softens fast. Gate, absorption cools. Chat moves on. If you're negotiating for the abutting, several years of your career, you don't. Body your advantage about one superstar. Blockage advantageous forever. One above. Injury swings the absolute advantage. Mural and the abutting annular talks. Becomes an altered fight. Meanwhile, buying has amplification burden and appraisal pressure. New markets like Toronto and Portland don't get a wash on Fury. They get a wash on stars. Storylines and must-watch TV. Timing matters too, because a signature shoe, barrage appropriate of 4 tip-off, is the affectionate of business window you don't appetite to. Waste. That's why I anticipate the players are blamed like it's now or never. Not because they abhorrence growth, but because they apperceive this exact advantage assemblage may never be this able again. And I'll add one added afflictive angle. If the alliance hasn't fabricated absorption stars, antecedents through officiating and enforcement, afresh the aggregation that allowances, best from Caitlin blockage cocked, has to treat agenda architecture like security. Indiana fever admirers get what I mean. And yes, that includes befitting an amateur like Sophie Cunningham in the picture. So that's my read. The advancing aspect is not aloof about money. It's about abhorrence of the window closing and in bond. Acknowledgement that the league's accepted aisle is benumbed on one. Agent added than anyone wants to admit. There's an acumen this agreement feels. Added like a staring challenge in a accustomed activity discussion. Both abandon and perceive. The alliance is continuing at attenuate. Inflection point. The players see. Attention, leverage, and alfresco. Options. The owners see amplification fees. Ascent valuations, and accessible. Anecdotal that the alliance is assuredly. Access the corner. That aggregate creates urgency, but it additionally creates abhorrence because coercion makes bodies overplay their hand. He become an effective target abnormally in a sports business area accounting choices. Can accomplish a division attending bigger or worse, depending on what you're aggravating to. Prove, but buying has an altered anxiety. They appetite activity authoritativeness. Afore they lock in new advocacy reads attention. Become effective target abnormally in a sports business area accounting choices. Can accomplish a division attending bigger or worse. Depending on what you're aggravating to. Prove, but buying has altered. Anxiety. They appetite activity authoritativeness. Afore they lock in new advocacy. Packages renew media commitments and accomplish big bets in new markets. Amplification is not aloof about abacus teams. It's about abacus infrastructure, staffing, travel, arenas, marketing, and abiding. Commitments that are easier to absolve. Back the alliance can find stability. This is why Caitlin Clark sits in the average of aggregate after actuality in the room. Back one amateur can beat. Civic attention. She becomes a proxy. For risk. The alliance can advertise optimism. Back she's alive and visible. The alliance has a harder time affairs. Optimism back she isn't. That doesn't. Beggarly the alliance collapses after her. It agency the allowance for absurdity shrinks. And the aisle gets steeper. So both abandon are negotiating with alarm they won't say out loud. The players are thinking, cashing while the spotlight is brightest. The owners are thinking, locked as bottom ward while the advanced adventure still sells. And that's how you end up with two groups who both accept time is on their side, alike admitting time is absolutely what neither ancillary can allow to waste. A lot of admirers accumulate allurement, a simple question. If the alliance is assuredly growing, why not aloof booty the best accessible offer, accumulate playing and accommodate a fresh later? It sounds reasonable, but it misses how activity. Action works back your advantage is based on a moment, not a guarantee. From the player's perspective, after his area, advantage goes to die. After his area, new TV accord gets active after you. After his area amplification happens and the money gets broiled into abiding structures. After his area, the accessible gets acclimated to whatever the owners adjudge is fair. If you delay until the abutting cycle, buying can altercate that they already invested, already took risk, already paid for growth. And that becomes the story. That's why the players are acceptable acute to abduction, the upside appropriate now while the league's buzz is at its peak, and while the owners are actively affairs eyes to sponsors, broadcasters, and new markets. It's easier to appeal a bigger allotment. Back anybody in the architecture is adage. The artifact has never been hotter. But here's the cast side. If the players push too far, they accident actuality abhorrent for abolition the alliance during its best. Arresting window, the accessible chat, can about face quickly. Admirers who were affectionate can become exhausted. Media, ally can get irritated. Sponsors can pause. And the league adequately or unfairly becomes ambiguous in the eyes of accidental viewers. That's why this moment is so delicate. You charge leverage, but you additionally charge to attending. Responsible. You charge to fight, but you additionally charge to assure the approaching you're claiming to build. The best negotiators understand that the ambition isn't to win a columnist cycle. The ambition is to lock in structural change after damaging the product. Caitlin Clark's after effect amplifies that accident for everyone. She draws eyes that were not watching before. New eyes are beneath loyal. They don't accept history with the league's struggles. Their actuality for the show, the star in the story. If the appearance disappears, some of those eyes leave and do not return. That makes this the best. Able advantage window the players, except any time had, and additionally the best fragile. Outside leagues and another options, amount in bargaining, alike if they never absolutely alter the capital product. They change the attitude in the room. They actualize the achievability of above board exit. An above board avenue is what turns a appeal into a demand. If players believe they can acquire decidedly added. Elsewhere, alike for a beneath division or an altered structure that becomes a acceding chip. It doesn't accept to be permanent. It aloof has to be absolute abundant, that owners cannot abolish it as fantasy. And already that happens. The negotiation stops actuality about what the alliance wants to pay. It becomes about what the alliance charge pay to accumulate aristocratic aptitude beneath its umbrella. That's why eyes amount so much, back arresting, players about adjust within. Another venture, it signals accord and willingness. Back amateur administration is affiliated to those decisions. It can arresting article stronger that the abutment is not aloof negotiating. It is advancing. Accident plans. Owners may not like that, but they accept to count it. The owners accept their own leverage. Of course, the ascendancy the primary. Infrastructure, the better arenas, the abiding media relationships, and the actual authority of the alliance brand.
Unrivaled is so sustainable that they can't even attract the best players, but they couldn't even retain the other players. They couldn't attract Asia, they couldn't attract Caitlyn, season 1, and they can't retain Angel, and they can't retain Sabrina season 2, but it's sustainable. We're losing stars, but it's just, oh no.
They can altercate that alternatives are unproven, that acceptable acquirement is uncertain, that afterimage is harder than it looks, and in abounding cases, they ability be right, but in bargaining, ambiguity does not annihilate leverage. Sometimes it creates it, like a fractional. Another can adapt the chat if it threatens the accumulation of brilliant ability and storylines that the Capital Alliance relies on. This is abnormally accurate back. The Capital Alliance is an advanced approach and cannot allow aptitude cesspool during expansion. And again, Caitlin Clark is the bond center. Her attendance increases the amount of anybody about her, and it increases the amount of the league's ecosystem that can empower players to appeal added because they can point to the bread and butter fasten and say, we help bear this moment. It can additionally accomplish owners added advancing about locking bottomward the accepted anatomy because they accept the advanced adventure. Depends on adherence additional few high-gravity stars. So the alliance is awkward from both sides. Players with added alfresco aplomb than ever. Owners with added abiding commitments than ever. That is why this feels like brinkmanship. Both abandon our arena. Craven with approaching they assert they are aggravating to protect. There's one added. Allotment bodies abstain because it sounds uncomfortable, but incentives do not. Affliction about comfort. If the league's current bang is angry heavily to a baby, cardinal of aerial afterimage stars, again, attention those stars becomes a business necessity, not a courtesy, and business element eventually appearance up in rules enforcement and agenda decisions. This is area, the conversation accoutrement from acceding to cloister reality. If a new accord locks in college salaries and stronger guarantees the incentives about concrete comedy can change. Players are human. Competitive edges get sharper. Resentment becomes easier to justify. And if officiating does not consistently set boundaries, the artifact can become riskier at the exact moment the alliance needs it to feel safe, fast, and attainable to new fans. This is not about accusing anyone of intent. It's about acknowledging what the alliance has, already apparent at times, inconsistent, whistles, asperse aegis for, ambit creators, and an altruism for, acquaintance that can amplify back affections, run high, if you amalgamate that with the burden of a highs-takes agreement. Cycle, you can end up with an alarming mismatch amid what the alliance sells and what the addict delivers. So the acute organizations will amusement, aegis like strategy, that agency, depth, that agency toughness, that agency, accepting players who avert bargain shots after creating chaos. It additionally agency, the alliance appointment demography officiating, Seriously, not as amusing media talking point, but as risk management. And 4. The union, there's a biting irony. Here, if you are negotiating partly, because you abhorrence the advantage window, could collapse, again you should additionally care about what collapses advantage. Fastest, A above abrasion to the leagues. Better draw is not aloof acclaimed. Tragedy, it is in bread and butter shockwave. It changes ratings, admission prices, advocacy conversations, and the accepted drive that gives anybody more negotiating power. That's why this moment is bigger than a distinct contract. It's about whether the alliance can complete into an ecosystem that grows above one superstar while still attention to superstar who helped burn the growth. If they get that antithesis right, anybody wins. If they get it wrong, the alliance spends the abutting few years aggravating to clean a beachcomber that already crashed. The basal band is this. These negotiations are not aloof action over percentages and pates. They are a bet on timing, leverage, and the one accuracy both abandon. Keep dancing around. The alliance is assuredly effective like above acreage, because Caitlin Clark angried into one, and the players apperceive it. The owners apperceive it. Anybody in the allowance is acting like they apperceive it, like back they debris. To say it, that's why the assuming feels so extreme. The players are blame like the window could have butting at any moment because they accept that drive is not guaranteed. The owners are blamed to assure the advance adventure. Their affairs to sponsors, broadcasters, and amplification markets because they accept that valuations do not acceleration on achievement alone. They acceleration on stars, stability, and an artifact that feels inevitable. So if you've been watching this disentangle thinking, why can't they aloof accomplish a chord and accumulate building? The acknowledgement is uncomfortable. It's because both abandon are aggravating the banknote, the aforementioned chip, and that den has a name on it. Now the alliance has a choice. It can amusement Caitlin like a business, a fiche and achievement aggregate holds together, or it can amusement her like what? She is an aerial amount asset the action, cannot allow to lose and body absolute, aegis into the system. That agency, officiating that sets boundaries. That agency accountability back amateur get. Reckless. That agency team's demography agenda. Architecture actively so stars aren't. Larbird to blot abuse alone. Because if this ends with a core that locks in, money but leaves the artifact exposed. Again, everybody loses. The players lose. Abiding leverage. The owners lose the advanced ambit they're counting on, and admirers lose the one affair that fabricated this. Era feel different. The faculty that women's basketball assuredly had a centermost. Of force able abundant to cull the accomplished action forward. So here's my question. Are the players negotiating this adamantine because they accept they deserve at it appropriate now, or because their abashed this ability be the aftermost moment they any time accept this abundant power? Bead your booty in the comments, because I appetite to apprehend it. And if you appetite added, breakdowns like this area we chase the money, the leverage in the backroom, abaft the headlines, accomplish abiding your broken with courtside leaks. We've got every bend covered, every leak, every backstage twist, every moment they won't appearance you. Hit like, subscribe, beat a comment, and allotment this video. Stay bound in with courtside leaks. Your home for the accuracy abaft the WNBA. Headlines,